Orc the bardic paladin, who sings and plays again. He tells the tales of glory and weaves a magic story. He'll join you at your table and ask you to share a fable. Heroes of humble origin, villains who must be fought again. No matter their skill or prowess, the people in life are countless. So we pray you heed our request. Enjoy this tale of sidekicks and side quests. And side quests.
Episode 130. Marius Blackstone, the Loyal Tracker. Welcome to Sidekicks and Side Quests, the Dungeons & Dragons podcast that helps to put humans back into humanity and breathe life into your campaign NPCs with backstory and bravado. That's right, we're building a world, one character at a time. I am your host, Kurt Krenwelge, the Bardic Paladin, and I'll be joining
Wes Murrell's
table in the Levitating Platter. Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Sidekicks and Side Quests, the best unofficial Dungeons & Dragons podcast in my humbly biased opinion. I've got an awesome guest for you this week, but before I get to my guest, you know I got to do it. I got to give you the ad read. This episode is brought to you by Plus One EXP and their brand new RPG Zine Club. Zine Club is a monthly membership subscription service featuring fresh zines from emerging and expanding creators across the globe. It's our way of inviting GMs, players, and zine lovers everywhere to invest more intentionally in the creative community. It's crowdsourced support without crowdfunding. So this service offers monthly releases that they put out in two 20 to 44 page saddle stitch zines. 3 different flavors. Take your pick from story zines, adventure zines, and all of the zines. You can pick your format of print and digital, or just get digital only for your favorite titles. Join the Clubhouse Discord section of the Plus One EXP community on Discord. Get the best prices guaranteed from your subscription that you're going to get each month. You get a private subscription portal where you can manage your subscription, add products, or change your information. Change your frequency monthly, every other month, something else. You pick how often you want these new titles to arrive. You only get what you want. And if you miss a month, why, you can always go back and add a title to your recent month's order. Get an annual surprise each February after your first anniversary. Get access to special content with interviews, how to play videos, special content for Zine Club titles. Get a free pizza if you fill out one of the RPG Zine Club passports, or redeem it for a free pizza at events where Tony is present himself. You're going to get access to new and known designers, the best voices from across the RPG design community. And know that Plus One EXP and RPG Zine Club curate their zines based on community interest and feedback to help you discover your new favorite creators. There's a DIE focus because Plus One is committed to championing diversity, inclusion, and equity in their projects. Creators with diverse experiences make our community better. So Zine Club prioritizes creating equity for all of our creators. And it's more than a purchase. Your subscriptions will let us invest more heavily in our print partners and provide them with potentially life-changing support by consolidating scores or hundreds of purchases as the club grows. So, if you want to learn more, I would recommend that you go to the website rpgzine.club. Again, rpgzine.club. And if you want, go to plusoneexp.com. And when you're buying stuff on that site, beard balms or lip balms or beard RPGs or whatnot, and you need a discount code at checkout, be sure to use the code Randolph, RANDOLPH, at checkout and get some savings on your purchase at no extra cost to you. Again, website is plusoneexp.com, and the Zine Club website is rpgzine.club. All right, and without further ado, I turn the microphone over to my guest. I ask, hello, mystery contestant. Would you care to introduce yourself? Tell us who it is that you are and what is it that you do?
Hi, Kurt. I'm Wes Murrell. I am a video production creative. I'm in my 12th year of making video content. And over the 12 years, that's included animation, reality TV, documentary style stuff, commercials. But animation is my passion.
Yeah, that's super cool. I know you have your own YouTube channel, and so I was able to kind of go through some of the oldest videos that I found, and I learned like you got to work on Voltron, and you made like this really cool ad campaign, I guess, for like a local law firm in your area that looked really spiffy and stuff.
Yeah. When I was in college, I got an internship with Voltron in St. Louis, which is where I was living at the time, and they were about to launch their 2011 version of the series Voltron Force, and so I came on right as that was happening. So I got to kind of jump in and get a lot of the episodes back from overseas as they were being animated, and yeah, it was awesome. It was my introduction into professional animation. It was great.
And so not only are you passionate about animation and us being coworkers together where we work, but on your YouTube channel, you actually kind of do like what I do. You get to do like your own sort of interview. Well, maybe it is a podcast too. Maybe you do put it out on an RSS feed as well. But like you actually like interview like pretty legit animators and composers and all sorts of cool folks.
Yeah, it is sort of a podcast with a video version on YouTube. I didn't set out to do that. Initially, I was just going to create some YouTube fodder, and I was just going to reach out to an artist I'd worked with on a project we had done together and just interview her for one aspect of that project.
Mm-hmm.
But after the conversation, I told my wife, I was like, that was a blast. I got to do it again.
Yeah.
So it kind of turned into a podcast about animated filmmaking, one craft at a time. And I discovered that if you just ask people, they'll be nice and say, yeah. So a lot of the more famous animation guests I've gotten have surprised me.
Yeah, no, that's the same for this hobby too. Like I've been able to speak with the former Dallas Cowboys center, now turned co-founder CTO of Demiplane, which is a major player in the virtual tabletop space, which now, as of the time of this recording, they just announced that Roll20, which is another big company, just bought Demiplane. So that's a
Holy cow.
deal. So like everyone from like the tippy top of that just down to like, some of our coworkers or like my cousin or family friends or whatnot. So yeah, the idea of this podcast being that, it's accessible for all. And that's what we want to do to help bring people into the hobby or just remind people of like, hey, this game's for everyone. And it's a cool space to be, to create and have fun. So I feel like, that's a pretty good segue into the next question I have here. Do you currently, or have you ever played Dungeons and Dragons before?
I have not played Dungeons and Dragons before. My wife's kid brother is big into Dungeons and Dragons. He's probably as close as I've gotten, apart from the two movies they've made, both of which I've watched. But I am aware that they don't do justice.
Well, I don't know. I would say the new one that came out, Honor Among Thieves, very much feels like sometimes how these D&D games can go in real life. Like
okay,
the NPC, the character named Jarnathan, that's totally like a dungeon master caught off guard. It's like, what's that guy's name? Jarnathan. And then they're like, yeah, that's their name. And then, all sorts of silly antics and banter and witty comments back and forth. Yeah, no. So I think Honor Among Thieves is a pretty good, accurate representation. So
is it like watching somebody's game play out or something, or
depending on the table, sure. And then of course, if you go on YouTube or Twitch or some of these other streaming platforms, there's plenty of actual play shows that exist. Some of the big players out there being Critical Role, Dimension 20, Acquisitions Incorporated. It's kind of like a really old one, but you get all kinds of people, and running different games, not just Dungeons and Dragons. So you'll have like everything from like Call of Cthulhu to Pathfinder to, Honey Heist to like, indie games and like popular mainstream games. So like, this hobby is wide open for the taking, as it were. So yeah, there's those kinds of shows and movies and projects. Even just recently, like Lego did a collaboration with Wizards of the Coast Hasbro So they did like an actual play one shot, or they played Dungeons and Dragons, but they used like the Lego piece sets, like to make like a Lego Dungeon Master screen, and everyone had their own little minifig, and they were on the adventure, and they're just playing with Lego pieces, but they're playing Dungeons and Dragons. So
I tell you, Lego, they've got something figured out. I feel like anytime they go into any other property, it's gold.
yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yes. Oh, and then speaking of animation, maybe something for you to pick up on your YouTube channel. There is a 1980s cartoon that exists of Dungeons and Dragons, of which those characters are making a comeback, as they may be coming back in the new books that are getting published this year. But I think Hasbro made some like action figures based on the characters from the animated cartoon. And if you watched the movie, which you said you did, when they're at the high games, and there's the other adventuring party that's like, there's the guy in the green suit, the wizard, and the diverse party, the barbarian looking woman in the animal skins and stuff like that. That's a reference to the cartoon from back in the 1980s. And also, there's like a Brazilian car commercial that you can find on YouTube as well, that they did like a live action adaptation with those characters, but like grown up as adults. That like everyone really likes too. So that's another random YouTube gem for your arsenal for D&D. So okay,
I'm not curious. Yeah, I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, okay. So the familial connection, but you yourself, you'll get a taste here tonight. So maybe you'll get to see, and you've seen the movie. So we'll see maybe if we can convince Wes to join to become one of us. Perfect. Well, this podcast is very easygoing, keeping it light, conversational, friendly. And the name of this show, Sidekicks and Side Quests, we like to focus on the little guy, the other, not the person who necessarily gets the spotlight. So this first question here, who happens to be your favorite NPC or sidekick character, whether they be from an RPG, a role-playing game, video game, movie, film, television, etc.? And why is this character your particular favorite sidekick character, not the hero in the spotlight?
Interesting. Yeah. I'd probably have to say Tails the Fox from Sonic the Hedgehog. I've just always liked Tails. I think because he's orange and I like orange. He's a fox and I like foxes, but he's also really cute and cuddly, but he's capable. Mm-hmm. I'm sort of annoyed when a hero or a sidekick is not very capable. But Fox is capable. Tails is capable, and he can fly.
Yeah.
So he's probably he's one of my favorite, I think, sidekicks ever.
Okay, I was gonna say that totally brought up a whole tangent, since you being an animator. How do you think it was with your confidence seeing the very earliest iterations of the Sonic movie when they first released what Sonic was going to look like? Then the fans had a riot basically, and then they were like, let's go back and fix Sonic. And then Sonic came back looking like, oh, this is exactly how we want Sonic to look.
Yeah, well, first of all, I cannot believe that the studio actually went back and changed Sonic. I mean, they had a trailer that the movie's in a final stages, and I am surprised that they actually, because they did the same thing with the Ninja Turtles. Everyone flipped out when they saw the Ninja Turtles, like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And the movie still came out, and the Turtles still look, kind of, crazy. So anyway, that surprised me. But I'm glad. I'm glad, having seen the movie, the Sonic and Hedgehog movie, I'm glad they changed the design. It's kind of one of those things where, like, this day and age is maybe too serious, too grounded. And I think that they took that approach with Sonic in the initial version. Maybe this is a little bit too grounded, and people flipped out, and the studio heard them and said, okay, we're gonna do Sonic for real. And I think in the end that was a good call.
So how happy did it make you in the very final beginning of the credits for that first Sonic movie when you saw Tails pop up then?
I Tails is, he's cooler than Sonic.
And then of course, Tails features heavily in the second one as well. So
yeah. So
Good choice. All right, and then same thing with the side quest or the B plot element. So what happens to be your favorite side quest, B plot element, whether it's from, again, same thing, RPG, video game, movie, film, television, etc. And why is this favorite side quest or B plot element your favorite?
That's a good question. I hope what I'm about to say is, in fact, side quest B plot. But I have to think about this. Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. I tell people there's a masterpiece hiding in that movie that they didn't quite get to. But I think there's gold to be mined in Obi-Wan Kenobi's quest to find this attempted assassin who ends up being Jango Fett. I think in just kind of movies, this is such a cool side quest. I wish it got more time in the movie. I also wish Anakin's quest to find his mother got a whole lot more screen time too. I think if you just focus on those two quests for more screen time, the movie I think would have been a much better movie. So yeah, probably I think Obi-Wan in search of this assassin.
Well, now I have to nerd out here because at the time of this recording, Dallas Fan Expo literally just happened. And I went to the panel and I got to see Tamora Morrison and Ming-Na Wen in person. So, of course, yeah. So, of course, right now he's known for being Boba Fett in his newest iteration for the Book of Boba Fett and getting to like reprise himself as clone troopers as well in some of the various other Star Wars shows like Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Mandalorian, the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, because he looks like a grizzled veteran that's like looking for a handout that Obi-Wan Kenobi sees. But yeah. So Tamora Morrison was there as I shared pictures with our coworkers of like, oh yeah, that blurry picture, like that's me in the audience, like looking up and listening to the interview. And I don't know if I shared this, but at one point I was in line for trying out the demo of Warhammer 40K Space Marines 2. And so I'm like really near the front of this line waiting to go. And Tamora Morrison had walked behind, like there were two people in front of me and like literally from like about like a 6 to 10 foot distance away from me because he was wearing a cowboy hat and like a nice orange and blue sort of print shirt. And he just walked with his handler. And I was like, and then, until he disappeared a little ways. And I told the people in front of me, hey, Tamora Morrison just walked behind you. So there you go. That's pretty cool.
Nice.
So I got to see Jango Fett in person this past weekend. So.
He's a cool dude.
Yeah, I know. I want more of him. I want Book of Boba Fett 2 and him to show up in the Mandalorian 4 now that they're rebuilding Mandalorian culture. It's like, of course, I don't know. Is he gonna go? That's the tension, I guess. Is like, is he gonna go back to his homeworld and like connect with his roots of like what his father was, even though he's like a direct clone, or is he going to stay like this guy in Mos Espa and just, be a gangster kind of a thing?
Yeah. I think the whole thing, honestly, Mandalorian lore and everything, all is sort of and even Jango Fett is almost an apology, because I think that like when they created Boba Fett in the original trilogy, I don't think they realized how cool he was going to be, that he was going to have any kind of following. And so which is why I think Lucas just kills him in Return of the Jedi, which of course now he's not dead. But I think it was like, there's this character and now he's gone. And I don't know. I just think they didn't realize what they had until people were like, oh, this guy's awesome. And so I think, that sort of spawned Mandalorian lore and all that. And
well, of course, with the Jedi, they went Eastern, and then it's like for the Mandalorians, they went Western. So it's like, all the Catholicism, Christianity, influences that are sparsely populated throughout there. So not to freak everyone out, like, although, we can like you and me and, who we work with, we could be like, oh yeah, the Mandalorians are like space Catholics. So they're super cool. But maybe you've seen this thing go around with Patton Oswalt, where he must be on the Tonight Show or Conan, and he's talking about like, oh yeah, Jon Favreau talked to me, and remember how in Parks and Rec I played like a disgruntled citizen of Pawnee, and I gave the Mandalorian filibuster, and then he was like, oh yeah, Jon Favreau told me he matched it up perfectly. So if you start his character's rant, it like for shot matches up with like the hand comes out of the sand and starts clawing out of the Sarlacc pit. So
just I hadn't seen that.
okay, well, so I'll have to make sure I send it to you later. So
Yeah.
before this devolves more into Star Wars and Sonic and all these other favorite things that we love as well, I always like to round out the personal interview section here at the beginning with the question, what are you passionate about and why?
Well, I'm passionate about animation, honestly. I think it's beautiful. I think it, as a craft, it demands patience and intimacy. And I love that it is an intimate craft, and that at the end of the day, you come away with something charming, wonderful, mesmerizing, just something really beautiful and kind of alive. I once told somebody, and I think it's true, that like animation is, it's like doing a magic trick, being a magician and doing a magic trick and being fooled by the trick you just did. So like even the magician gets to partake in the magic of it. So I'm passionate about animation. I think there should be more good animation.
I'm sure it's something that I've seen or read, some smart person, smarter than me, talking about like, oh, we see, these ancient Paleolithic, artists on the cave walls. And we think, oh, look how, silly and naive they are because of like how weirdly they're done. But then someone said like, oh, but if you get like a torch or a campfire and you flicker the light around, then it makes it look like the weird shaped horses that they painted on the wall makes them look like they're running and moving around, like, or the mammoths or whatever they were painting it like. It makes it mimic moving. The same thing with the very early technology of the person on the bicycle, the man on the horse, or the person on the ridiculous Victorian bike, and you spin it around and the trick of the light, and it looks like they're the horse is galloping or the bicyclist is cycling and stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I hadn't heard that.
I'm just a source of all sorts of useless knowledge.
Useless cavemen or animators. This is
well, there you go. So now you can go back and I don't know, maybe it's a vacation idea. Go to these places and shine a light around and be like, oh, animation. I see it. We've been doing it for tens of thousands of years.
I have wondered sometimes, like, what if I was born in another time and animation wasn't a thing? What would I do? Oh,
you do cave paintings and figure out light tricks, I guess.
There you go. They would teach me, no, this is how you, like, oh, aha.
That's why we got so excited by fire. Not only could it provide warmth and a means to cook food, but it was entertainment.
That's right. Yeah, you see?
Well, we've made it through the personal interview section, and now it is time to head into some NPC creation. And NPC creation is brought to you by you, the podcast audience, and our patrons for Patreon. So now is the time of the show where we give a loud hurrah, a cheers to our supporters. So to you, our queen of the Patreon, Goblin Katie, aka Katie Downey, as well as our other wealthy tier patrons, including Anson Jablinski and Mom and Dad, we say cheers. Again, if you want to join this cool club of people, just donate $2 or more a month. That's what gets you a shout out on every episode. All the folks I just named, they're at least wealthy tier or above, which means they get to introduce an element of chance to the random tables that we have here in this section, and we might get to hear some of their responses used today. So if you'd like to learn more about the Patreon, which I'm sure you all do, I've got so many more listeners now. Hey, I have a Patreon. If you want to support me in the podcast and have this continue to be awesome and do better and better things, you should go to the show notes below, go to my podcast website, or just go directly to patreon.com/sidekicks and side quests. Learn about our accommodations that we have awaiting for you. Help us to grow and expand our operations of the levitating platter in this demi-plane and worlds beyond. Okay, so I know, you were like, oh, I'm not a D&D player. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I was like, don't worry, we'll figure this out. And so in this part of the show, we like to make up a character. And so there could be a number of ways we go about this, whether it's, you're taking an existing character from somewhere and you want to convert them to fit in a tabletop game. You want to roll the dice randomly and create someone, or you just kind of have like a skeleton framework of what you want to work with. And then we just, we kind of spitball or we roll some dice or we figure it out along the way. So what are we going to be doing tonight?
Well, as I am new to this whole procedure, I suppose, I'd probably mine a character I created once upon a time for a children's book manuscript that I tried to publish a couple of times. So.
Okay, well then this is good because you have a pretty good idea of who this character is. They're near and dear to your heart, so this should be a cakewalk.
I do, yeah. But I chose him, I think, because every now and then, and this, I don't know if this happens when you're doing D&D, but it's like you create a character, and you discover things about them, and you find you like them more or less than you anticipated, which is always interesting.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I think as player characters or, the dungeon master, the game master who has to whether they're crafted, well in advance for the background story of the character, or you just have to think of them in the moment. You're right. Exactly. As you spend more time with the character and you start thinking of these, well, does he like butter on his toast or not? What does this say about him as a character of, something seemingly inconsequential? And you're extracting it back and you're just like, oh, they have very strong opinions about things all of a sudden that I didn't realize. So, okay.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. Well, then we'll just work our way through the questions. And I think we said, or, before we started rolling, that if we get stuck on something or you're just not sure, we can roll some dice or we can just kind of spitball some things and get ourselves unstuck, if you will.
All right. So that sounds good. It sounds very D&D-y.
Perfect. Okay. Well, then first question here, what is the character's name?
The character's name is Marius Blackstone.
Marius Blackstone. Okay, that's a very strong D&D name if I ever heard one. Marius Blackstone. The mysterious Marius Blackstone. Or maybe the ordinary Marius Blackstone.
Well, more mysterious than ordinary, I suppose.
Okay. And then what is their ancestry? What is their species or race or background as far as that's concerned?
He is a man.
Okay, so a human dude. Okay, so just, hey, we need human dudes in the game. We have everything of elves and dwarves and dragon men and tieflings and all these other things. So it's good to just have a human NPC every once in a while. So, okay, Marius Blackstone, human. Okay, cool. What is their job or role in society? If the assumption of Dungeons and Dragons is that it's a medieval fantasy land. So it's okay, there may be base assumptions of it being fantasy Europe, but there are plenty of other settings and place settings and other games that, don't have those assumptions, and maybe it's, somewhere else. But anyway, if we're assuming a generic fantasy land, or maybe it's futuristic, I don't know, but what is their job or role in society?
His job, it's sort of twofold. He's an archer, maybe that's a skill, and he's a tracker. So he's who you go to if you want to. He's like a bounty hunter, I guess.
Ooh, okay, bounty hunter. That's cool. Yeah, we can work with that. He is a bowman, so he likes, archery is his fighting style. And then, he's tracker. He's got to be able to, find his bounties. Okay.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool. Okay. How old is Marius Blackstone?
Probably mid-30s. Yeah,
okay.
Mid-30s.
Mid-30s. Okay. And now, okay, cool. So now this definitely should speak to you as an animator, as an artist. Now we come to the question, describe the physical appearance of Marius Blackstone, because obviously this is mostly an audio medium, so we don't have the benefit of animation. Although,
right.
Well, I'll resist the urge to be like, you should totally animate something, so then that way it goes with the episode. But no, I'll resist that. Describe for our audience, what is the physical appearance of Marius Blackstone, the bounty hunter?
Well, that's a good question. He has long brown hair, probably shoulder length, a fairly close cropped beard, not unlike yours. He has a wide-brimmed hat with a feather
Mm.
and a long brown coat and gloves, I guess. Yeah, gauntlets, I guess, or leather gloves.
Okay, leather gloves. Does that get in the way of his archery, or is it like those fingerless kind of glove situations?
A more average archer, I suppose it would get in the way of his archery, but truthfully, I never thought about that. So no, it does not get in the way.
Okay, very cool. Or I was trying to think like, well, even if it doesn't officially exist, a dungeon master could be like, oh yeah, they have magic gloves, so they look like normal gloves, but they give him an arcane boost to his ability to actually wield a bow and arrow and stuff like that. So okay.
Interesting. I see.
So as far as the rest of his physical appearance to go, okay, we got the beard, we've got the long brown hair, and obviously stereotypical, or maybe not stereotypical, but what I would imagine, like, yeah, typical bounty hunter sort of look. But is there any other distinctive notes about his physical appearance and stuff like that?
Yeah, I would say he's not. I don't want to say refined because that's not the right word. Like he's not terribly like gruff looking necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably a medium build, I guess. But in terms of any other distinctive features, no, not especially.
Okay, cool. And then let's see. If we had to describe Marius Blackstone, the bounty hunter, with 3 adjectives, what 3 adjectives would you use?
I got to think about that. I guess I would say loyal, introvert, and quick.
Okay, loyal, introverted, and quick. Okay, so like very no nonsense, does the job, and is not especially chatty or anything like that with people.
Not especially. Not if he doesn't need to be. Yeah.
Okay. And then let's see. We like our characters to have cool things on their person. So, what's going to be a valuable item, piece of lore, secret, or ideal or concept that Marius Blackstone would ascribe to? Sometimes if we're just kind of like free range, feeding, spitballing sorts of ideas, people can have multiple ones. Unless you don't have any particular thing and you want to roll a dice and maybe see what you get.
Because does come out of a manuscript that I tried to publish. I guess he does have a secret. It's a secret even to himself, though. But he is the kid brother of the Lord of the Dark.
The kid brother, the Lord of the Dark.
Yeah, basically I don't want to say the Dark Lord because but that's basically he's the kid brother of the Dark Lord.
So, assuming the Dark Lord is like, if we had to gamify it or something like that, do you mean like just like a really like a big bad evil guy, or do you mean like some sort of like evil deity or something like that in the game?
Yeah, so this is tricky because it's kind of it's kind of crux of the story, I suppose. So the way it works within kind of the lore is that the Lord of the Dark, he's actually a good man who has inherited the kingdom of darkness through a series of he's the kind of the last in a long line of wicked sorcerers. Surprise, he's not wicked, he's good, and so that kind of creates a dilemma for him. But in any case, the kingdom of darkness does belong to him, and which is the tension of some of the story. And Marius Blackstone is his kid brother, and neither of them knows that. And so they're friends, but brothers. So that'll be teased out in one of the chapters.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So he is the unknown kid brother of a royal figure of somewhere in the world. However we have to, if we're going to take Marius Blackstone and adapt it to our games and stuff like that. So wherever the equivalent of the Lord of Darkness is in your world, the idea is that Marius Blackstone is his unknown kid brother.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Okay, and then let's see. We like all of our NPCs, our characters, to be able to give out side quests. Like, you're in a video game, there's a yellow exclamation point hovering over their head when you go to interact with them because they have a job waiting for you. So what's going to be the particular quest that Marius Blackstone would be willing to recruit or hire player characters to go and do on his behalf?
Well, he's a tracker, so I suppose you don't call him unless you need somebody found. He's going to find somebody.
Okay, so he needs the player characters or the heroes or the protagonists to help him with his job in finding someone, you think? Or is he not that kind of character? Because we said he was loyal, but he said he was also introverted. So is he going to go out of his way to offer this?
Yeah, well, okay. So you'll have to help me figure out how this works into the world of D&D. He's kind of a side character. And so he wouldn't go and ask anyone to help him because he's an
Mhm.
introvert, but he would join somebody else if he were asked to go find someone. So I suppose, does he need to do the asking in this scenario or the job giving?
I mean, that's typically the approach. I mean, certainly there is an angle. It sounds like you're suggesting that he could potentially just be like a hireling, like an NPC that the player characters could potentially recruit. Like they'd probably have to like pay him money to like, hey, come with us. We're trying to find someone. Okay, cool. Pay me a couple gold every day and I'll work with you guys to like find who it is you're looking for. But, kind of the idea of this show is like, oh, if we're going to drop Marius Blackstone in our world, obviously he could do that. No reason why he can't do that. But okay, that's an interesting point you raised about the introvertedness. Maybe it's something like in some of these games, like Dragon Age or Fallout or Mass Effect. It's like a loyalty thing. You said he was a loyal character. You have to build up trust with him before he feels comfortable letting you in on some problem that he has. Like, hey, we've been working together. You've been good to me. We've been square. I have this problem. I can't deal with it. You guys are capable, or you, the hero, are capable. I need your help. So, what is that quest then that he gives the hero to go help him out with?
I suppose that's a good question. I mean, he'd need to find information. Maybe he can't find a particular map,
Okay, a map.
and so he commissions someone to, I don't know, go yonder and uncover it, I suppose.
Okay, so there's an elusive map that he needs. Is this something as part of his work, or is this like, like the beginning stepping stone? If Because in my head I was thinking like, oh, the obvious thing would be like, oh, I'm trying to find my family. There's this hole in my knowledge of my past, and I don't know like who really my family is. So are you going to help me with that because we've built this trust? Or it could just be like, hey, I'm really interested in this thing and I don't have a map to it. If you can find that map, that would be really cool.
Yeah, I think for him, he's not terribly curious about his past because he
Mm.
doesn't know what's missing because he is the youngest. It's sort of like a Luke and Leia thing. I don't know. I have a sister, so why
Hmm.
look into it kind of a deal.
I see.
But I suppose his job is to track people down, track fiends down. And so I could see him needing clues to whatever that might be it a map or be it information.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, okay. So, in order for him to be better at his job, to improve him and, get him to the next level, he's missing this map or this piece of information. So, he needs the player characters to go and do it. Okay. Fair enough. So, when the player characters come back successful, they have the map, they have the piece of intel he needs, or whatever it is. How is Marius Blackstone going to reward the party for being successful in this endeavor, in this quest?
It's kind of a boring answer, but I think he would just pay them gold from his commission.
Okay, I mean, easy enough to do that. Again, just thinking very video gamey. It's like all of a sudden he's like, boop, here's like a super cool magic item. I don't have use for this, but maybe you do.
Okay. Yeah.
Or like, maybe he agrees to like help them out if they are in a pinch or something like that, or whatever
Okay.
it may
Yeah.
be.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Ah, interesting. Yeah. I like the idea of him having just sort of a magic totem that he doesn't really have use for, that he's sort of gathered upon his quests and pawning that off, I guess, trading that.
Okay, so like a magic totem. Okay,
Yeah.
and there are specific like totem items. So, yeah, that could be cool. So like some sort of like totem of power or whatever it may be. So, vague enough for a dungeon master to figure out like what specific item to put in their game. Okay, that's pretty cool. But then we also have to consider the opposite. what's going to be the consequence of failure? He's tasked the party with this mission, but they come back empty-handed. They refuse him outright. What's going to be the consequence of failure or saying no? Is he the kind of person that's going to like immediately turn on the party? Or is it just kind of like, oh, well, I was wrong to put my trust in you sort of a thing, and you're incompetent in my eyes now, or whatever?
I don't know. That's a good question. Probably the latter, I guess. I suppose you just sort of, just turn his back and say, forget you. I'll go somewhere else.
Okay, and so then you miss out on the cool item that he could have given you.
That's true. And he has cool items.
All right. Is there any way that the players could like make it up to him? Is he the kind of character that you could later approach like after some time and like work on repairing those bonds? Or is he the kind to just cut ties? Hey, I don't care anymore. I'm just going to move on with my life to the next job, the next place.
Yeah, I think he would give you a second chance, but after a smaller task. So if you left and came back, you'd have to prove you meant business. And so he'd give you a smaller task first.
Mm.
But it would probably be something like insignificant, something he doesn't really need. Like, okay, now you've got to go get a dragon's egg or something, which he doesn't need or want. But he's got to know now, are you willing and interested in doing this? And if yes, then okay, now you can go get the thing that I told you to get.
Oh, funny. So yeah, like, we have to go storm a dragon's lair and go, we all nearly died getting you this egg. And he's like, okay, cool. All right. Can you go get that thing I told you to go get me originally?
Yeah, right.
But after all this? Yeah. Oh man. That'd be very funny. Okay, so what are the goals and motivations of Marius Blackstone as a character?
Ooh, that's a good question. I probably should have thought about that more. I suppose I think because he's a loyal person, and I don't know, I think your friendship. I think in the end, what he's really after is gaining somebody he can trust.
With his current steady state, like when a party's going to meet him, because he talks, because we've talked about loyalty, being a bounty hunter, depending on, how they define that loyalty. Is he like part of a guild? Is he kind of like I'm just like a lone bounty hunter, and if you have the money, then I'll do your job, or how does he work?
Yeah, he's kind of a lone bounty hunter. Basically goes on reputation alone. So if a king is in search of someone or something, they know to call him. So he's usually working for like high-ranking officials, kings and lords and so forth. Just word of mouth, and he's a lone guy.
Okay, all right. So, well, I mean, maybe you'll find him in the local watering hole with the peasants and stuff like that. But that's just because he's between jobs, and he's waiting on the next monarch or regent to come. Sending a messenger after him to be like, "Hey, you're being summoned to court because there's some problem that the Duke needs resolving or whatever."
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And if you saw him in a tavern, you wouldn't know him necessarily because he's not terribly distinct, I suppose.
Okay. So with these goals and motivations in mind, how do they affect Marius Blackstone's general personality?
How do his goals and motivations affect his personality?
Yeah, so like if he's someone who's like searching, for loyalty and trust and friendship and stuff like that, ultimately in the end, from doing what he does, how is this going to affect his general personality? Does it like butt heads against the fact that he's like this introverted, quick, loyal guy, or what?
No, so he will not seek anyone out in terms of like he's not going to go looking for a job. He's not going to go looking for companionship or friends. But if they find him, he is warm. He is friendly. He doesn't have time for your rubbish. So like I said, if you turn him away and come back, he'll kind of put you through the ringer.
Mm-hmm.
So he's he would be warm and friendly to meet, not terribly cold. But you would have to initiate any kind of conversation or any kind of interaction or any kind of job because in his mind, he doesn't need any of those things. You've got to prove it's worth it. Even your friendship, you've got to prove it's worth it. but he's not cold. He's not. He's not rude.
He's not brooding in the corner, looking mysterious and like a loner. He's just like the dude that's just hanging around. Is just like, I'm good, man. Like if you want to like hang out and like make it worth my while, okay. But like otherwise, I'm not going to go out of my way to be your friend, kind of a thing.
Yeah, he's okay by himself.
Okay. And how does Marius Blackstone normally interact with people? Is he pretty nuanced depending on who he's talking to? Is he pretty one note across the board? Or like, how are we going when we interact with him, what's he gonna be like?
Yeah, so he's pretty nuanced. He's very adaptable. So give an example, he has a friend who is just prejudiced from the get-go. And Marius is the kind of guy who would try to encourage him to maybe not be so prejudiced. He does take people as they are and meet them where they are. He's kind of nimble in terms of how do I interact with you. So that answers your question.
Yeah, okay. Does Marius have a particular accent or language that he uses? Are there any idiosyncrasies in how he acts or speaks?
Oh, that's a good question. He's probably just English, but I will say his secret brother is Scottish.
So, tension there.
Yeah, I never thought about him, but he's probably just English, British.
Okay. And then let's see. What impact has Marius made on the world? How has he shaped his local area?
Well, he is his impact is significant, but anonymous isn't the right word because people kind of know how to find him. But because he is sort of a tracker of villains, is largely. I mean, he's not. I say he's a bounty hunter, but he's not necessarily interested in just anyone. They've got to be sort of fiends and monsters and dragons and things.
So he's more of like a monster slayer, not necessarily a bounty hunter, is what we're saying.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, he will search for, let's say if your family is kidnapped, he'll search for them, not necessarily for the villain who took them, but he is most famous for hunting down monsters and things for great kings.
Because those are the ones that are always bothering the regions because they're always plotting to overtake the kingdom or whatever. It's like occasionally he's like, oh, I finally get to track like an elf or a dwarf or a human for once instead of like hunting down a hydra or a dragon or a vampire or whatever it is.
Yeah. His local area is a safer place because of him, and the world at large is a safer place too.
And then the final optional question in the NPC creation section, does Marius Blackstone have any current problems that prevent him from being an even bigger player on the stage?
Problem necessarily, but probably his introversion. The fact that he keeps to himself prevents him from being a bigger player because he is skilled enough to be a major player on the scene, but he keeps to himself too much.
Does he have to compete against others that are doing the same thing? Like there's like, oh, you called Jack because like Jack is like the one that would be on the posters and like everyone knows who Jack is. Oh, Jack the Giant Slayer kind of a thing. Like, yeah, Jack's the cool guy. But then Marius Blackstone is obviously like on par, maybe even better, but because he's introverted, he's not the one that's going to get like the brand recognition, if you will.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I guess I should think about that right now. Yeah, I don't. So I think if he had competition, he wouldn't feel threatened by it because he knows himself and he knows his skill. I don't know. I think he would just assume that those who know his name and those who want him, he considers himself the best. And so they'll know where to come. And if they go anywhere else, they must not want the best. And he's still okay with that.
I'm getting a very detailed picture in my head of the scene from The Empire Strikes Back, and Darth Vader has all the bounty hunters assembled before him. So you've got this whole mishmash of like Boskins and IG-88 and then Boba Fett and stuff like that, since we were talking about it earlier. So like he'd be does he work for evil monarchs and regents in the like area of like, if they call him up, like, is he going to answer the call, or is he like, no, I have a code of honor, I'm not going to work with you guys?
Yeah, no, he's got a code of honor, but that's interesting. Otherwise, yeah, I suppose he would be somewhat like Boba Fett, who's the only character in the Star Wars lore to like talk back to Darth Vader and be fine. He get away with it. Boba, bro, you just negotiated with Darth Vader. What? Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, probably as we discovered, which I need to watch myself, but probably as we discovered in Clone Wars and Rebels, like Jedi have obviously had all kinds of scrapes and wars and battles with Mandalorians. So like Mandalorians are the only ones that can really go toe to toe with Jedi without having to use the Force, all because of their training and their use of Beskar, which is always, it's just, again, it's so cool. Why haven't they made a Mandalorian video game? That's what I want to play the next. We're chilling with Cal Kestis, being a Jedi in training. We're getting this Outlaws thing, so we get to kind of be like Lando Calrissian, and we get to be like Han Solo. I'm ready for the one where we get steeped deep in the Mandalorian culture, and we get to become like, noble religious warriors. We all get to say this is the way and all this stuff. So that's what I'm waiting for.
That is a great idea. That's a great idea. I hope that happens. I hope that happens soon.
We just have to speak it into being, and then eventually they'll figure out that's what people want. So
somebody needs to. No, that's a great idea. That's a great idea.
Well, hopefully they'll listen to this podcast episode. They'll put Marius Blackstone in their game, and then they'll get right on that. So, well, we did it. We made it through NPC creation. That now it is time to take our fair hunter and put them into a random encounter. This random encounter is brought to you by my sponsor, Zencastr. Zencastr came into my life when I didn't think I would need it, but now I definitely need it with trying to raise a family and keep the podcast episodes flowing and all that stuff, and not trying to keep myself awake for all hours of the night trying to get these episodes edited. Thanks to Dane and Benjamin over at Dispel Magic showing me this service, I was hooked. And I decided to become a paying member so I could get access to all these awesome tools with editing and getting these great episodes to you. So it is so easy and super easy now to record a podcast with Zencastr. You log into your browser and you start recording a high quality podcast right away. You could record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen, knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. A hard sell. On that point alone, I've been podcasting for a couple of years now. That is amazing. So that is a great selling point of this service. You can sound your best. Have you ever worried what you might sound like on a podcast? With Zencastr's post-production process, it makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes the ums and ahs as you click on that feature in the post-production settings, and in your recordings, it's going to remove those awkward pauses and conversations too with the click of a button. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with a click of a button. It really is that easy. It's all in one. If you have thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are done. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast all in one place and distribute to Spotify, Apple, and all other major podcast destinations. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code SIDEKQPodcast, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. Again, the website, zencastr.com/pricing. Use the code SIDEKQPodcast and get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. Thank you so much to the sponsor, and back to the podcast. And this is the random encounter section of the show. This is where we get to do D&D. This is where we do a little role play, a little vignette, a scene with the character that's been presented to us. So, since you birthed this character, obviously you are going to do a fantastic job of breathing a life into Marius Blackstone, the human tracker, bounty hunter, monster slayer dude. But the question becomes, who am I going to be in this scene? Am I going to be one of my podcast adventurer characters that's like been traveling with Marius? And, this is where he gives you the quest of like, oh, I need your help to do this thing. Am I some regent calling for Marius Blackstone, to come to me? Is it some sort of like vignette in the tavern, like where he's just chilling and like a bunch of people are like giving him guff because it's like, oh, look at this weirdo in the bar, and they don't realize who he is, or like, what? I don't know. What kind of scene are you interested? And like, this is your moment to like show off how cool Marius Blackstone is. So how are we gonna breathe a life into him?
Oh man! So now I create a scenario, and
we'll get to play it out. So you're gonna be Marius, but then like, who am I? Who am I gonna be in the scene? What scene are we gonna do?
I see. You shall be. You shall be a leprechaun.
Oh, a leprechaun.
Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Leprechaun.
Who has hired me? Me being Marius. You have hired Marius Blackstone to do this quest for you.
Okay, so I'm a leprechaun, and I've hired you specifically because, I mean, the stereotypical thing would be that someone stole my pot of gold. Is that kind of the angle that we're going for?
Yeah, let me think about that, because that would be kind of the most obvious route. Let's say that someone...
Yeah, they stole your pot of gold.
So we're outside of a nondescript town, right next to the woods, and this wood has kind of a boundary with the Feywild, the fairy realm, the Fey. And so occasionally, you'll get like all sorts of, interesting, outlandish sorts of beings, people, creatures that will occasionally come through. So the people of the town kind of know to expect this. And they try to do their best to work with those who come through. And lately, there has been a leprechaun who's come through, and he likes to show off his pot of gold and spend it on good company and booze and all that sort of stuff at the tavern. And eventually drinks one too many drinks, goes to sleep, knocks out, and he wakes up the next day in a panic. And he's searching around this tavern, up and down, in the all the way up in the rafters, all the way down into the basement, past all the dead rat corpses and all this. And so where Marius Blackstone is going to find himself, I think, you tell me if this is right or not, but you're probably in your room. You're probably waking up to the historical sounds of this wee little man. That's just like, what do you mean you can't find it? I was spending all my money and I was doing this and doing that. And he's like yelling at the top of his lungs. It's early morning hours in this place. And he's just going on and on and on, like retelling the whole story and trying to trace his steps and all that. So how is Marius going to react to all this? Hearing the noise, this cacophony coming down from the downstairs.
Well, I confess that Marius is not going to be terribly interested or terribly bothered by this mess, because it's not his mess until you ask it to be. So I suppose there could be someone who knows what your problem is and who knows that you should find Marius Blackstone to help you out.
Okay, so kind of like in the Lord of the Rings, with like, oh, that's Strider over in the corner. So like this nice guy who's the tavern keeper, who knows that Marius likes to stay here in this particular town when he's not on a job, will be like, well, don't you know, sir, that we've got one of the finest hunters and trackers staying with us, the Mr. Marius Blackstone. I think he's up in his room, and perhaps if you promise some of this gold that you were spending, then maybe he could help you find it. He's like, well, okay, I think I have a right mind to go pay. So, like, these loud, thunderous, for a small guy, thunderous footsteps that come up the stairs, and just like a like repeated hammering on your door. Be like, wake up now! I haven't got time to waste. Wake up, lad.
Oh, he'll open the door and hello, welcome. And I suppose he'd ask you what your problem was.
Well, I was, going about my carousing, the ladies, the drinking, the having a good time, and then he looks embarrassed. He's like, I can't find my pot of gold. They always say if you look for the rainbows, but it's been a clear, bright, sunny day. I can't find my pot of gold. Son, I need your help. The barman at the bottom said you would help me find it. You find Tracker? Is his word any good?
I suppose Marius Blackstone would say something like, well, have you coin? No gold. Have you coin? Make sure you're good for whatever it is you're about to hire him to do. Unless, of course, you assume that he'll be paid upon completion of the task.
So you start like doubting him and saying like, oh, can you even pay, kind of a thing. And maybe, I don't know, the leprechaun maybe takes the insinuation of like some sort of insult of like you're insulting him in some way. And he's like, I won't be taking that sass with you, boy. You be not sassing me like that. And so he maybe he does some like minor illusion magic, to show you what the pot of gold looks like. And he's like, you see that? Pure silver and gold and platinum pieces all inside me pot. I've been collecting it for centuries, all up and down the Feywilds. And and then he reaches maybe into a pocket, and maybe it's a pocket that lets him pull out something that would like make you curious or make you agreeable to him. So like, what's the thing he pulls out of his pocket that makes you take a double look of like, oh, this guy's serious?
Well, I suppose with Marius Blackstone, this would just be a formality, because if you were to seem dire enough, he'd do it. So this would be more like more just making sure that you're serious. So whatever you want to pull out, let's say it's an IOU from his pot of gold, with maybe too much gold promised for the quest. And Marius would say, no, 2 coins will do. But really, it's not about the money, just to see how serious you are and whether or not you'll see this thing through, because the quest will be dangerous.
And he starts chuckling, and he reaches back into the pocket again, and he produces like a fully formed emerald, and he holds it up to you. Like, does this be interest to you, boyo? Asking that to Marius Blackstone, if like, will this suffice as like a guarantee of like what I owe you?
Interesting. Yes. That could be interesting, because if everything goes sideways, or if you skip out, this could be an interesting token for trading later.
Yeah, we'll say it's like easily somewhere. The game has breakdowns of like what specific gemstones are worth, but we'll say it's like a tiny enough emerald that maybe it's worth like 10 gold pieces or something like that. So he holds it up and he's like, is this good collateral for you be taking me quest?
Yeah. Marius would take that and probably want to gather as much information from you as he could. Do you have any? Do you have a map of the land, or any clues as to who's taking your gold, or that sort of thing?
Well, there are these 3 funny fellas that were wearing black cloaks, and they were staring at me weird. I don't normally swing that way, but it's the ladies that really like me. And so he starts going on this whole wild tale and talking about like the physical appearance of these 3 like cloaked figures that were kind of like eyeing him the whole night. And he's like, and come to think of it, they were buying me lots of drinks. I thought it was really weird again that they were like wanting to get in bed with me, but like, no, I see it now. They were just trying to ply me with drinks so they could separate me from the gold. Yeah, that's what it was. And so, yeah, he gives you the total, description you need to start beginning your hunting of like trying to find who these 3 guys are. And, maybe he says, like gives you a clue about like maybe some like sort of gang affiliation that they may have had, because, there's a rumor of like there's a gang hideout somewhere along the road, or or they smelled this particular way. So that might give you a clue of like an area that they like to frequent or something like that. Sure, the leprechaun will say, I've been all up and down this tavern, and I haven't seen them, so I know it's those 3 because they're not here in this tavern. They skipped out. I'm sure of it. So he's like pretty confident that he thinks it's these 3 guys. And again, that's from his perspective. Could be through your investigations, you find out it was something completely different. But yeah, so suffice it to say, he gives you the quest, and then the leprechaun will go back downstairs, and he'll go cry into a morning beer and eat a hearty breakfast. But is there any last thing that we will leave the scene with Marius doing or saying before he's going to go off and start engaging in this whole hunt to find this pot of gold?
Well, it's probably counterintuitive, but I think Marius Blackstone would invite the lad to come
along for the quest. I know he's kind of a loner, but the leprechaun has skin in the game, as it were, and could be useful in certain situations. So he'd take him.
Well, you call him a lad, and so like as you're getting to know each other and figuring out your banter back and forth, and he probably says something to the effect of like, "Oh, lad, you are the whippersnapper here. I'm at least over 300 years old. Like you don't know what you're talking about. You look like you're like baby. You're barely out of your baby diapers, aren't you?" He's kind of like saying stuff like that to kind of goad you a little bit. Needle under you a little bit, but also like trying to figure out who you are. And so as the scene starts to close out, the buddy cop movie montage slowly to cue would begin as the two of you begin to go around this town and shake down people and try and figure out where this pot of gold is.
Yes, very good. Yes.
And scene. So we did it. We made it through the random encounter. So what did you think it was like getting to embody and play Marius Blackstone in some Dungeons and Dragons?
So is that how it works? Is that kind of how you play? And then there's board and dice and things?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's theater of the mind. Sometimes it's a grid and miniatures or token pieces or whatever. Yeah, that's basically it in a nutshell. Now, obviously, if you were playing Marius like as a player character, you'd have like a player character sheet in front of you. You'd have skills and equipment and powers and abilities and stuff like that. And there'd be dice rolls involved, like, oh, hey, you're going to go investigate. Okay, give me an investigation check and let's see how successful you are. And you wanted to go talk to the bartender to figure out if he knows any information. Okay, give me a persuasion check. Or, oh, you see someone like, getting ornery with you. Okay, give me an intimidation check. So other things like that, and like rolling dice for, when combat breaks out. And so Marius pulls out the bow and arrow and he starts Legolas one-shotting and stuff like that. So yeah, there's dice, there's pencils, there's miniatures and tokens and theater of the mind. So it's all in there. Yeah. But in its most basic form, Dungeons and Dragons is just simply collaborative storytelling with your friends.
Huh. Interesting. Huh. Cool.
Yeah. So as we're beginning to be in the final thoughts section of the show, what did you think it was like getting to be on the podcast? Your first time maybe on a D&D podcast, maybe not your first time on a podcast or interview show ever, but yeah, what did you think of your time here on Sidekicks and SideQuests?
Well, I think you're a great host. I think you keep the conversation going, which is great. I think, my gosh, I'd have to D&D, I think, would keep me on my toes creatively. The very kind of a quick, keep me on our toes, which is cool.
Yeah, I mean, you may have to take up your wife's kid brother's offer to like. I'm sure he's probably been like, Wes would surely play in a game if I invited him. So you may have to just take him up on his offer, and maybe have him run a one shot for you or something like that. See how you like it. And maybe D&D is not the particular flavor of a game because there's all sorts of games that exist out there. Everything from like, I want to say that there's like a cartoon RPG that exists that was probably created in the 80s or the 90s. And again, things like Call of Cthulhu to some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles RPG. Like there's all kinds of like tabletop role-playing games that exist, and they don't all have to be D&D, but just something maybe to test the water, give you the first. Here on this podcast, I like to say I've given you the sample taste of like what it's like to play tabletop role-playing games. So if you want another hit, okay, now you got to go find someone to like go play with.
Fair.
Whether it's your relatives or your friendly local game store, yeah.
Well, I hope what I do see soon is that Mandalorian game you mentioned, because that sounds cool.
This is the way. Yeah, so as we're here in final thoughts, I always like to just make sure I get any other feedback or, I'm just checking in with my guests. And, I always like to just make sure you had a good experience and that, I didn't scare you away or turn you off to D&D or whatever. So, any of those thoughts. And then certainly I want to leave the stage, the microphone, the soapbox, and the platform to you to let us know, like, where can you be found on social media if you want to be found, if you've got YouTube channels or projects or things you want to plug and let us know about so we can stay in touch. And then finally, any passions or causes that you want to make our audience aware of.
Yeah. So, well done. First of all, yeah, I think you did very well. Did a great job. But yeah, in terms of if anyone's curious to follow any of the animation that I'm up to or any of the projects that I'm up to, you can find that stuff at Murrell, Murrell, MurrellImagination.com. That's my animation website. And then from there, you can follow this various social media platforms just by clicking a button.
And then any passions or causes you want to make us aware of?
I am developing a pilot for an animated miniseries, 4-episode miniseries, shopping it around. It's a Christian animated cartoon called Mothers of the Christ. Follows the 5 women mentioned in Jesus' genealogy in the book of Matthew. So as soon as I can get that off the ground, I hope to share more of that.
Very cool. We will watch your career with great interest, as Senator Palpatine once said. Well, very cool. Hopefully that this time was well spent in good company. And, again, having that animator background, I will resist every temptation to be like, hey, man, you should like draw my characters and do cool stuff like that. But, I'm sure we'll be seeing each other very soon. So hopefully we can geek out about this more in person. And maybe by then you'll have had an opportunity to talk to your brother-in-law there. And maybe we'll get to be discussing like what character you're going to play in your very first one shot or something like that.
Well, thanks, Kurt. Thanks for inviting me on. And yeah, just being very hospitable and generous with your time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Sidekicks and Side Quests. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music, Overcast, or YouTube, or feel free to save the RSS feed to use the app or player of your choice. Visit our website, sidekicksandsidequests.com, for links, write-ups of the NPCs, and to learn more about the show and the guests who have been on it. To stay up to date and interact via social media, you can follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram/Threads, Twitter/X, and Reddit by searching for Side KQ Podcast. You can also find our small Discord community as well online. I would love to talk D&D and showcase your fan art, stories of how you used our NPCs, discussions, and commentary. And hey, if you'd like to hail the bard and send me a message, an email, you can do so by communicating with sidekicksandsidequests@gmail.com. To help this show be the resource it's meant to be, I ask that you leave a review on iTunes, 5 stars, please, to help spread the word and share our podcast with your friends and family. Whether you're a veteran player or an aspiring dungeon master, there's something here for everyone, and I want to hear about it. As mentioned in the NPC creations section of the podcast, I do in fact have a Patreon for Sidekicks and Sidequests. If you love this podcast and what we're trying to do here, I would appreciate it if you would just go to the website, patreon.com/sidekicks and sidequests. No matter your lifestyle expenses, we have wonderful rewards at every level of Patreon membership tier. Modest, comfortable, wealthy, and aristocratic accommodations await, and we welcome all patrons to the Levitating Platter. Seriously, your financial support allows for this passion project to continue to invest in itself through the tools that will take our production to the next level, as well as provide more content for our patrons and the community at large. Please consider supporting me on Patreon if you can.
Sidekicks and Sidequests is unofficial fan content permitted under the fan content policy.
Meaning I'm not approved or endorsed by Wizards.
Portions of the materials used are property of Wizards of the Coast.
Copyright Wizards of the Coast,
LLC.
Thank you for your support, and I'll see you at the pub next time.
Bar to rock on 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.